Derek Langston had built everything from the ground up. No trust fund, no shortcuts, no one handing him anything. Just sweat, sleepless nights, and a conviction carved into his bones. If you work hard enough, success will find you. He believed that the grind paid off, that discipline beat talent, and that anyone who said otherwise simply hadn't pushed hard enough. That belief fueled every decision he made, every policy he set at Langston Freight Co., a logistics company that started with one truck and a laptop in a shared studio apartment on the edge of Atlanta. Now, 2 decades later, it was a coast-to-coast operation. Fleets of trucks moved goods across the country under his name. Warehouses buzzed with precision. If you worked at Langston Freight, you worked to win. That was the code. Derek was tough but fair. He didn't micromanage. He didn't ask questions about what employees did after they clocked out. As long as they showed up, worked hard, and delivered, he made sure they were paid above the industry standard. He believed that was enough, until one night. It was past 9 p.m. The warehouse floor had emptied. Only the night janitors remained, their vacuums humming faintly in the distance. Derek sat in his glass office, scanning performance metrics on his laptop. Numbers had always made sense to him. They didn't lie. But tonight he couldn't concentrate. Movement in the break room, down the dim hallway, caught his attention. A lone figure stood at the food counter. Slim frame, back slightly hunched, shifting from foot to foot. At first, he didn't recognize her. Then it clicked. Mariah Dawson, 29 warehouse associate, reliable, quiet, the kind of worker who never complained, never asked for favors, always took the overtime no one else wanted. She was invisible in the way that only the most dependable people could be. But something was off. The cafeteria had closed hours ago. Yet there she was, speaking softly to Andre, the overnight cook who sometimes stuck around to help clean. Derek couldn't hear what they said, but Andre's reaction was all he needed. A furrowed brow, a reluctant glance around the room, then a slow reach beneath the counter. He pulled out a small white container. Takeout. Mariah muttered something that looked like "thank you," shoved the container deep into her oversized tote bag, glanced over her shoulder like a thief, and walked quickly toward the exit, head down, shoulders tight. Derek leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, brows drawn low. The whole exchange gnawed at something in him. Mariah worked more than most. Double shifts, weekends, holidays. If anyone at his company should be able to afford a meal, it was her. So why was she hiding food? He stared back at the laptop, but the data on the screen blurred. Charts, margins. KP is. None of it mattered right now. That image of Mariah shoving that container into her bag, like it was contraband, stuck in his head like a splinter. Maybe she just forgot her wallet. Maybe she was saving for something big. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't his problem. But Derek didn't believe in maybe. He was up before he even realized it. Coat on, tie loosened, step steady. Logic told him to let it go, but something deeper, older, pulled him forward. By the time he reached the parking lot, Mariah was already halfway to the nearest bus stop. No car, no waiting ride. Just her in that tote bag, walking fast into the night. He should have turned around. Instead, he followed. He sat 3 rows behind her on the bus, silent. She didn't see him, didn't check her phone, just leaned against the window, eyes open but far away. Not tired in the usual sense, bone deep, weary, like someone used to holding things together with thread and sheer will. As the bus pulled farther from downtown, the lights outside dimmed. The streets narrowed, sidewalks cracked, stores turned to boarded-up lots. It hit him then, how little he knew about the world his workers returned to. He paid them well, yes, but was it really enough? Mariah didn't fidget, didn't look around, just waited. And when the bus stopped, she pulled the cord, stood, and stepped off without hesitation. Derek followed again, 2 paces behind. He had no idea what he was walking into, but in the pit of his stomach, something told him, whatever he thought he knew about hard work, success, and fairness, it was about to get torn apart. I'm not saying you have to like or comment, but if this is resonating, why not? And hey, feel free to pass it along too. The bus rattled through the night like it had a purpose of its own. Inside, the overhead lights flickered with each pothole, casting jittery shadows across rows of half-empty seats. Derek Langston sat near the back, collar open, hands folded. 3 rows ahead, Mariah sat motionless. Her head leaned against the glass, eyes fixed on something outside, or maybe nothing at all. He studied her in the flickering light, not like a boss tracking an employee, but like a man trying to understand something that didn't compute. She didn't move, didn't scroll her phone, didn't even blink much, just sat there still, heavy. And for the first time in his life, Derek realized what burnout looked like when it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. It looked like this. The bus turned and the city changed. The bright facades and clean storefronts of downtown faded into cracked sidewalks and chain-link fences. Gas stations with flickering signs. Laundromats with busted windows. Strips of asphalt with more pothole than pavement. It wasn't far from his office, maybe 5 or 6 miles, but it felt like another world. And he knew, with a deep, creeping shame, he'd never been here. Not really, not on foot, not after dark, not without tinted windows and a locked car door between him and this version of Atlanta. Mariah didn't hesitate when the bus slowed near a stop without a shelter, just a crooked pole with a number sticker and a trash can. She pulled the cord like she'd done it 1,000 times. No pause, no confusion. Her routine. She adjusted the strap on her bag, pulled her coat tighter around her frame, and stepped off. Derek followed a few seconds later. The air outside hit colder than he expected. Wet, like rain had just passed. The wind carried that smell of concrete and rust, the kind you only noticed if you'd walked these blocks yourself. He kept a quiet distance behind her, enough not to spook her, just enough to see. She walked fast but not frantic. It was a tired kind of pace, someone used to getting from A to B with no room for distraction. Her path cut past old houses with peeling paint and low fences. Some lights were on, most weren't. Driveways sat empty. One yard had a broken swing set with no swings. Another had a sagging porch with Christmas lights still strung from 2 seasons ago. She turned the corner and approached a squat brick building, an apartment complex that looked like it hadn't seen a maintenance crew in years. The stairwell was open air, rusted metal rails on each side. She climbed to the second floor without looking back. At the top, she dug in her tote bag, pulled out her keys, and slipped inside. Derek froze across the street, staying in the shadows, eyes locked on the unit's narrow window. The curtain was thin, yellowed, and through it, he saw everything he wasn't meant to. The apartment was nearly bare, not just minimalist, barren. No table, no couch, no framed photos or rugs or clutter, just a single mattress on the floor, a few folded clothes in a milk crate, 2 small backpacks stacked neatly in a corner, and then 2 kids, a boy and a girl, barely school-age, sleepy-eyed and silent as they peeked around the edge of the mattress. Mariah knelt down beside them. The weariness melted from her face the second they looked up at her. She smiled, soft, gentle, and pulled the takeout container from her bag like it was treasure. She opened it slowly, careful not to spill a thing. The kids didn't wait. They leaned in fast, not out of greed, but hunger. Real hunger, the kind that doesn't hide, the kind that's learned patience. She split the meal right down the middle, no hesitation. She didn't eat a bite. Derek didn't move. He just stood there, hands shoved in his pockets, breath tight in his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't feel in control. He felt ashamed. And as a low wind passed down the street, shaking the power lines above and rattling a soda can across the curb, he realized something he hadn't dared consider until now. Maybe the system wasn't just cracked. Maybe he'd helped build it that way. Derek didn't know how long he stood there. Maybe it was minutes, maybe longer. The cold air stung his face, but he barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the sliver of life unfolding behind that yellowed curtain. He wasn't supposed to see this. He wasn't supposed to know. But now he did, and he couldn't look away. Inside, Mariah sat on the floor with her 2 kids curled beside her. The food was gone in seconds. The boy, maybe 5, licked the plastic fork clean. The girl, just a little older, leaned against her mother's shoulder with her eyes closed, full but not satisfied. Not really, just relieved. Mariah smoothed her hand gently over her daughter's curls, fingers slow, careful, like she was tucking her in without a bed, without a blanket, without anything but the fragile warmth between them. There was no TV flickering in the corner, no tablet glow, no distractions, just the three of them. A mother pretending this was enough, and two kids too used to settling for less. Derek's chest tightened. He'd spent years preaching about self-reliance, personal responsibility, the grind. He'd believed that anyone who showed up, worked hard, and kept their head down would eventually get ahead. That was the deal. That was the promise. But this wasn't about someone not trying hard enough. This was someone doing everything right and still barely holding it together. The apartment didn't look temporary. It looked like they'd been surviving here for a while. The crate with the neatly folded clothes, the makeshift curtains strung up over the bathroom doorway, the kids' shoes lined up in the corner, one pair each worn to the soles. This wasn't rock bottom. This was life. And Mariah was doing it all while pulling back-to-back shifts at his company. The weight of that truth hit harder than he expected. She hadn't asked for help. She hadn't taken time off. She hadn't even missed a deadline. She showed up early, stayed late, picked up shifts no one wanted. And still, a mattress, a cold floor, and dinner that came from pity instead of pay. He stepped back from the window. Guilt bloomed in his gut, hot and dense. He wasn't the kind of man who cried, not easily, not in public. But tonight he felt something crack, not from weakness, from recognition, from knowing in his bones that he'd looked the other way too many times. The bus ride, the bare apartment, the hidden food. It wasn't about one woman, it was about what he hadn't seen. Or worse, what he'd chosen not to. Behind him, wind swept down the street, stirring leaves and wrappers along the curb. A loose sign rattled against a pole, metal against metal. He took another step back, planning to leave, to walk away and try to make sense of it all in the safety of his own home. Then a voice floated through the night. Software, small, from the open window. "Mommy, are we going to have breakfast tomorrow?" He froze. Inside, Mariah paused, just for a second, just long enough for her body to tense. Then she turned toward her daughter, smoothed the hair back from her forehead, and whispered the words so gently it almost sounded like a lullaby. "Of course, baby. I'll figure it out." Derek heard it, every syllable. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. Not out of pity, out of anger, because that wasn't a promise. It was a shield. A tired mother lying to her child, not to deceive, but to protect, to give her something to hold on to, even when there was nothing left. He backed away from the building, slow. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of the truth pressing into his ribs like a vice. Hard work wasn't the problem, the system was. And for the first time in his life, Derek Langston didn't know if all the hours, all the deadlines, all the bonuses and motivational speeches meant a damn thing. Not if someone like Mariah could give everything she had and still wonder what her kids would eat in the morning. Not if he'd spent 20 years building a machine that rewarded performance, but ignored people. He turned, walked away from the building, and didn't stop until he reached his car. The leather seats felt too warm, too clean. The silence inside it felt wrong. He sat there for a long time, and for the first time in decades, he didn't think about the bottom line. He thought about a child's question and a mother's answer. The next morning, Derek sat at his desk staring at his laptop, but nothing stuck. The screen glowed with spreadsheets, reports, KPIs, all the usual numbers that once guided his every move. Today, they meant nothing. His mind was still in that apartment, on that cold floor, watching two kids eat a shared meal like it was a holiday. He'd tried to rationalize it on the drive home, told himself she had a job, that he paid well, that maybe she was just going through a rough patch, that it wasn't his place to interfere. But every excuse felt thinner than the blanket Mariah had wrapped around her son. He hadn't slept, just sat in the dark, remembering her voice. "I'll figure it out." That sentence had looped in his head until it felt like a call to action. And now, with morning sun bleeding through his office window, he still didn't have a plan. just a conviction burning in his chest louder than logic. A soft knock pulled him from his thoughts. His assistant stepped in quietly. "She's here. Mariah Dawson. Said you wanted to see her?" Derek stood surprised. He had been debating whether he should call her in all morning, had even rehearsed what he'd say. Now she was here, of her own choice. "Send her in," he said, smoothing his shirt and clearing his throat. Mariah entered a moment later. She looked like she had that morning on the bus, tired in a way that went beyond sleep, but composed, her spine straight, her voice calm. "You wanted to see me, sir?" He motioned to the chair across from his desk. She sat without hesitation, but her hands were folded tight in her lap, knuckles pale. She was bracing for something, a reprimand, a warning, maybe worse. Derek sat across from her and exhaled slowly. "I saw you last night." She froze. Just a blink. Just long enough for the tension to spike in the room. She didn't ask what he meant, just stared, shoulders inching back, walls rising fast. "I followed you home," he said. He didn't know how to make that sound less intrusive, less wrong, but he needed to be honest. Her eyes widened. Not with fear, but with fury. Controlled, buried, but real. "I don't understand," she said, her voice clipped, measured. "I saw the food," he said gently. "The apartment. Your kids." Her face didn't crumble. It hardened. Every emotion tucked behind layers she'd clearly built over years. She didn't flinch. She didn't argue. But her jaw tightened. Her hands turned to fists. "I'm not asking for sympathy," she said coldly. "You think I don't work hard? You think I'm a burden?" "Number. Then why are we having this conversation? Because I should have seen it sooner." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She blinked fast, once, then again. Her composure cracked for a second, but she caught it, reinforced it. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "Yes, I do." He leaned forward. His voice was steady, lower now. Not a boss, not a savior, just a man who finally saw what he'd missed. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is me owning up to a blind spot, one I built this company around." She stared at him, unreadable. And then he reached into his desk, pulled out a thick envelope, and slid it across the table. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to him. "I'm not here to buy your silence," he said. "I'm asking for your help." "To do what?" "To fix this. For everyone." He told her about the plan forming in his head. Higher wages, flexible hours, on-site childcare, emergency support, not as handouts, but as a foundation, a future. "We built this company on the idea that hard work pays off," he said. "But last night showed me something's broken. I want to fix it, and I want to start with you." She didn't move, didn't touch the envelope. Her eyes were glassy now, and for the first time, she didn't bother to blink them clear. "Why me?" "Because you never asked. You just endured. That shouldn't be the price of survival." She reached for the envelope, paused, then pulled it into her hand slowly, like it might vanish. She clutched it to her chest, but kept her eyes on his. "What do you want in return?" "For you to believe me when I say, you're not alone in this anymore." The silence stretched between them. Thick, honest. Then she nodded. And when she stood, she did it like someone who wasn't just surviving anymore. She did it like someone who'd been seen. The office was still waking up. Phones rang. Forklifts beeped. Somewhere, a radio played faintly through a cracked break room door, but Derek barely heard any of it. He paced inside his office like the floor might open beneath him if he stopped moving. His fingers hovered over his phone. Then they moved on instinct. He didn't go through his assistant. He dialed Lisa Romero directly. The call rang once. "Derek?" Lisa's voice was sharp, efficient. "Didn't expect to hear from you before the board meeting next week. Something up?" "Yeah," he said. "We need to talk." "Today. About what?" "Payroll, benefits, emergency assistance, everything." There was a pause on the line. She was silent, but he knew that meant her mind was already clicking through numbers, implications, potential fallout. "You're not the type to throw out buzzwords," she finally said. "What happened?" He hesitated. He could have sugarcoated it, Could have said it was a long-term strategy shift or a cultural reset, but Lisa had been with him since the second truck rolled out. She'd seen the sleepless nights, the missed birthdays, the decisions no one else could stomach. She deserved the truth. "I saw something I should have seen years ago," he said quietly. Another pause, then typing in the background. "Okay, talk to me. We need to raise wages, not pennies, not inflation-matching bumps, real increases, enough to close the gap between survival and stability, enough to make sure no one working full-time here ever has to wonder if they can feed their kids." Lisa's voice was softer now. "That's a big shift, Derek. You know that. We've got investors tracking every decimal. Let them." He moved to the window, looking out at the trucks being loaded one by one. "We built this company on the backs of the people moving freight, pulling doubles, working holidays. They do everything right, and we still let some of them fall through the cracks. You're thinking of Mariah, aren't you?" He didn't respond right away. Just let the silence answer for him. Lisa sighed. It wasn't annoyed, it was knowing. "All right," she said. "I'll run numbers. Wage increase models, benefit projections, impact scenarios. But it's not just about money. If we do this, we need long-term structure, childcare support, emergency assistance funds, maybe even tuition reimbursement for advancement." "That's exactly what I want," Derek said. "No band-aids, no PR stunts. We do it right." Lisa paused again. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." He heard the click of her keyboard again. "Faster this time." "Okay. Give me until the end of the day. I'll have a draft. But Derek, this is going to be a fight. The board, the investors, some of your managers, none of them are going to like it. Then we fight." Lisa let out a small laugh, the first real one of the morning. "Damn right we do." The line clicked off. Derek stood still for a moment. He looked out at his own warehouse, at the people moving around with clipboards and headsets and work gloves. He'd seen them 1,000 times, but now they looked different. Not because they had changed, because he had. The boardroom was still, not the calm kind, the kind thick with resistance, silent but electric. Derek sat at the head of the long table, fingers steepled, jaw set. Around him, polished wood gleamed under the recessed lights. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a skyline that looked cleaner than it felt. Across from him sat 12 faces, sharp suits, perfect postures, eyes that had memorized profit margins but never once visited a loading dock. Lisa sat to his right, calm, unreadable, but he knew her well enough to catch the subtle cues, her tablet open, a report ready to go. She'd prepared for every objection, every jab. Still, that didn't mean this was going to be easy. Daniel Mercer, one of their most senior investors, leaned back in his leather chair like he was already annoyed. He adjusted his cufflinks, then let out a dry breath. "Let me get this straight, Derek. You're proposing an across-the-board wage increase, expanded benefits, and a new fund for employee emergencies?" "That's right. And you want us to sign off on this. Why?" Derek didn't blink. "Because it's the right thing to do." Daniel's eyebrows lifted. A scoff followed from someone farther down the table. "Come on," Mercer said. "We're not running a shelter. We're a logistics company. These are jobs, not lifetime guarantees." "Our people are already paid well for this industry," said a woman near the end of the table, tapping her stylus against a folder. "If we start handing out raises like candy, we lose our edge." "And the shareholders?" Daniel added. "What do we tell them when the margins drop?" Lisa slid a report forward. Her voice was calm, controlled. "We've modeled multiple outcomes. Yes, this plan costs us up front, but right now, turnover is bleeding us dry. Training, onboarding, rehiring, it's constant. This isn't just about decency, it's about sustainability." Derek leaned in. "We don't develop new tech. We don't make the next big app. We move freight. That means our success rises and falls with the people on the ground, the ones who stay late, drive through snow, work on Christmas Eve. We treat them like machines and then act shocked when they break down or walk away." "We're not a charity," Daniel repeated. "We're a business, but we're also a community. If our people are struggling to survive on full-time wages, that's not a personal issue. That's a company failure. Another board member, older, silver-haired, flipped through the report. She didn't interrupt. She didn't nod either, just watched him with careful eyes. Lisa kept going. Retention improves with support. Productivity improves with security. You want people to work like they're invested? Invest in them first. What if it doesn't work? Daniel asked. What if all we do is lose money? Derek's voice didn't waver. Then I take the hit. That froze the room. Lisa turned toward him sharply. What? You heard me, Derek said. If this plan doesn't work, I'll cut my own salary. Personally, no golden parachute, no executive excuse. The murmurs started immediately, low and scattered at first, then rising. Daniel narrowed his eyes. You're putting your paycheck on the line? Yes. You're serious. Dead serious. Because I built this company believing that if you worked hard, you'd be okay. But I was wrong. If I'm asking you to take a risk, I'll take it first. Silence. Then the silver-haired woman, Catherine Wynne, the longest-standing board member, slid the report back across the table. I think, she said slowly, it's time we stop thinking only about next quarter. I vote yes. Derek exhaled, subtle but sharp. One by one, the votes followed. Not unanimous, not without side eyes and objections, but enough. It passed. And when Derek stepped out into the hallway, it was like something lifted off his chest. Not a victory, a beginning. Lisa caught up with him. When you said you were serious, she muttered, I didn't think you meant your own damn salary. Derek let out a breath. It worked, didn't it? She shook her head, a grin tugging at the corner of her mouth. Yeah, it did. They paused near the window overlooking the main floor. Forklifts moved, phones rang, workers buzzed through the warehouse like usual. But nothing felt usual anymore. Because now it wasn't just about one woman or one mistake. It was about all of them. Every worker who'd ever eaten dinner in their car. Every parent who'd worried about rent. Every shift that ended with sore feet and an empty fridge. Derek looked down at them. Not like a boss, like a man ready to do better. The office buzzed around him. Calls, footsteps, the clatter of work. But Derek barely noticed. He stood near the glass balcony that overlooked the floor, watching the motion like it was the first time he'd ever seen it. And maybe it was. For years, he'd watched this company grow, measured it in freight volume, contracts signed, revenue reports. But now, for the first time, he saw it in people, in lives. Lisa stood beside him, arms crossed, her voice low. So, we're actually doing this, he nodded. Yeah, and I'm the one who's going to tell them. You sure? It's a big change, big shock. They deserve to hear it from me. She studied him for a second, then gave a small nod. All right, boss. She walked off and Derek stayed, breathing in the weight of it all. This wasn't just a program or a pay bump. It was a reckoning, a shift in everything he used to believe. Because Mariah wasn't the exception. She was the signal. She'd done everything right, worked hard, showed up, stayed late, and still went home with too little to show for it. That wasn't her failure. That was his. That was the system he'd helped build. The rules he'd never questioned until it was too late. But now he had a chance to rewrite them. He walked through the warehouse like he belonged there, like he used to back in the early days. No clipboard, no suit jacket, just presence. People glanced up as he passed. Some nodded, some stared. One even asked, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Derek said, a half smile tugging at his mouth. "Better than okay." He stepped onto the break room platform, tapped the mic beside the vending machines. The static snapped, then cleared. "Good morning, everyone. I need just a minute of your time." Heads turned, conversations paused, forklifts idled. "I started this company with one truck and one rule: work hard and you'll get what you earn. But I learned something this week. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes people do everything right and the system still lets them fall through the cracks." He paused, scanning the room. Faces looked back, curious, guarded, hopeful. "That ends today. We're raising wages, we're expanding benefits, We're setting up emergency support and childcare assistance, not because it looks good, but because it's the right thing to do. A beat of silence. Then someone clapped. Then another. And suddenly the room erupted, not in celebration, but in something quieter. Relief, gratitude, trust. Derek exhaled, not a finish line, a beginning.